Hello and welcome to Chaotic Insights, where I break down the TV show Chaotic, and today we'll be talking about Season 2, Episode 16, Newbie. So grab a snack, start your laundry, and we'll dive right in. Episode summary: Kaz and Peyton are in the lava pond on a scan quest for Zapater when Milaine attacks them. Peyton dropped his scanner, so they scramble to find it and port out. At the port court, a new player named Shinwan arrives at Chaotic for the first time, and the boys rush to help her because they think she is attractive. Shinwan has her first match against Clay with Kinian versus Atropol at Poral Village, and Shinwan wins. After that, the boys explain how Param is a real place, and Shinwan wants to go to the lava pond to scan Milaine. Despite the danger, they port to the lava pond and they try to scan Milaine, but Zapater appears, and the boys get a Zapater scan instead, and they decide to port out due to the danger. Shinwan stays and successfully gets a Milaine scan. She shows it off at the port court and joins a new group of guys to test it out in the Betadrome. Analysis. So this episode includes a lot of exposition in it to catch up viewers who might have missed the From the Deep episodes with Valfor. Like, they say show don't tell, and in From the Deep they did do that. Like, they did show and didn't tell, versus in these episodes they are telling. They want to catch you up, right? They said plot has happened, we can't show it all again, but in case you missed it, we're going to sprinkle in information that you might have missed. And that's exactly what they do. Seeing the From the Deep episodes, while helpful, is not required viewing to understand this episode, because they include all the exposition that you would need to understand this episode in this episode. So, for example, when they see Milaine in the lava pond for the first time, they say something to the extent of, "That's a Marillion, like one of the ones that came out of the doors of the deep mines. They're bad news, we better port." Right? And that's the gist of what you need to know, right? You need to know that that's a Marillion, and they're bad news, we better port, right? And then they also sprinkle in like they came out of the doors of the deep mines. Because if you're like, well, that's a Marillion, well, what is a Marillion? A Marillion is one of the creatures that came out of the doors of the deep mines, right? And they're bad news, better port. That's all you need to know. And we get it. We get the gist of what they are and what we know about the Marillions at this point. And they do this multiple times. Like, they do it that first time when they're in the lava pond, but they also do it when they're explaining it to Shinwan later. And they use that opportunity of we're explaining it to Shinwan to also explain it to the viewers who might have missed the episodes that would have given them that context. Now, they do add new information in this episode, like they say no one has a Marillion scan yet, which is the premise of this episode. Like, how does the first human get a scan of a Marillion? And that's an exciting idea for an episode. There is, however, a discrepancy because Kaz and Sarah both have Belfour scans, and Kaz and Peyton specifically heard Belfour declare himself a Marillion, so we know two players who have scans and have used them in the Betadrome before. And, like we know in the Mega Match episode, they broadcast the Betadrome battles on the TVs in the port court. So it's not like nobody's ever seen a Marillion before. But, we conveniently forget about that. So maybe the players that we know, Kaz and Peyton and Sarah and Tom, maybe they're keeping that to themselves. Maybe they haven't, pulled them out or like really tried to dig deep into the Falfor. They just have the scans. So it's interesting. Like, with Aparu, they said, we're going to keep Aparu a secret, and we're going to keep it a secret that we have Aparu scans. And they did, and, you know, good for them. But I don't know why they would keep it a secret that they have Falfor Marillion scans. So it's interesting. But an additional part of the setup of this episode is that it's Shinwan's first day at Chaotic, which adds to her confidence level because she isn't totally aware of the consequences yet, right? It's an interesting parallel to Tom's first time at Chaotic, so maybe we should compare and contrast, right? Similarities include there's no orientation or preparation program, and their first matches were almost immediately after they ported in, and the first match was in a real drome with a 1v1 battle. Also, Overworld versus Underworld at an Overworld location, and they both win their first match. Hooray! Then, after their match, a player directs them to Port to Param. And so contrasts include confidence level. Shinwan is much more confident than Tom was the first time around. Shinwan also more quickly figures out the mechanics of the drone, and Shinwan is surrounded by kind, informative people, whereas Tom gets tricked by, the malicious Clayborn, if you will. So I think it's interesting how Chaotic relies on this culture of generosity to teach new or incoming players the mechanics of the game and also the mechanics of porting to Param, right? The game behind the game. You have to rely on somebody either kind to tell you about it, to teach you, or you got to figure it out for yourself. And with Shinwan, she has, this culture of kindness being thrown at her to some extent. Like, they are willing to teach her and show her the ropes and give her contextual information that she needs to be successful in both Param and the drone, right? And so, yes, it being her first time adds to her confidence level because she's not fully aware of the consequences of like dying in the lava pond or what a Marillion is and how that has socio-political ramifications in both Param and Chaotic. But she also is like really confident and she has the capabilities to succeed, and clearly she's confident and capable and does. So she does a little bit of both. Like, she gets context, but she also figures it out for herself. So that's interesting. But I do think we have to talk about the boys' obsession with Shinwan, and it's played for comedy, and I think it just has an undertone of misogyny to it. Like, what feels icky about this plot line to me is motivation, right? The boys are helping her, but with an ulterior motive, and that ulterior motive isn't like explicitly stated, but it's understood to be attention or romance, right? They expect something in return for being nice to her, and like that's just not how interacting with people usually should go, right? You should be nice to people because it's a person, and human decency and like being nice to people is kind, and not, you shouldn't be nice to people because you're gonna get something out of it. That's like manipulative. And it reminds me of The Good Place. Like, there's this chart that exists of like the axis of intent versus impact, and the boys are having impact on Shinwan because they are helping her acclimate to her new environment and giving her good information, right? They're doing beneficial things, they're having a positive impact, but their motivation is corrupt. So, spoilers for The Good Place, here's that chart. And, right, because their motivation is corrupt, they would have gone to the bad place, right? They are doing bad things, even though the impact is good. And that's what I have to say about that, right? And then there's the Sarah of it all who like sees right through what they're doing. Like, she knows what they're doing and she is trying to protect Shinwan from it to some extent. But, I think it's just important to point out the plot point perpetrates misogynistic actions without consequences to like signal to the audience that that's inappropriate. And even though it's played for comedy, it's impact versus intention. Like, sure, the intention is good, but the impact is bad, right? Because they're not condemning the misogyny that like comes with it. And it's like, even if you say something sarcastically, you're still saying that thing, right? And so even though they're doing it comedically, they're still doing it, right? And the it in this situation is misogyny, right? Even though they're doing it comedically, they're still doing it. They're still perpetrating the, culture and the stereotypes associated with that. And it's there's something about it that feels icky to me. Now, moving on to lore, we have Kinian is the overworld ambassador to the Mopedians, and so she can use Mopedian music. And now there is lore in this episode that is really significant, but it feels very subtle because it's said in what feels like a throwaway line, right? They're transitioning to a new scene, but it's actually very important. And it's when Shinwan says, then he hit the sewer pipe and all this disgusting slop started pouring into the lava pond, right? They use that as a transition into the scene of like her telling the story of how she got the Milline scan. But this is actually like a really important piece of lore and gives us insight onto, this overarching story and progression. And the titular Marillion invasion, right? Millian is making moves. He is flooding the lava pond. He flooded the lava pond. And that is important. And we will maybe come back to why, or you'll come to understand of like the aquatic creatures that are the Marillions, right, benefit from water, you know, from flooding. And so flooding a location like the lava pond maybe benefits the Marillions and does not benefit the fire creatures who live in the lava pond. Magma and Zapater, water isn't their strong suit. So we saw Kaibon with Milline, so we can assume Kaibon is still under Marillion mind control because Falfor mind controlled him in the From the Deep episodes, and Kaibon assisted Milline in flooding the lava pond, which is like part of his homeland. So we can understand that Kaibon is still under Marillion mind control. And also, we get to see the Marillion's plans start to take shape, right? We have the mind control, we have flooding locations, and it's interesting to see them take their first move in such a subtle way. And we see pieces of it when we're with Tom and Kaz and Peyton, and like Shinwan even, right? We see the battle and we see Kaibon there by the pipes, but we don't see the flooding happen itself. It's in this throwaway line of what Shinwan experienced after the boys left. And it goes to show how like we're really seeing Chaotic through like Tom and Kaz's perspective. And so they learn it from Shinwan. And so we learn it from Shinwan. And it's an interesting way of how the narrative presents itself. On to fun facts and other notes. There is a moment in this episode where Shinwan first gets to Chaotic and she's like, is this even real? And this is a moment where I kind of missed the old animation style because in this animation style, the backgrounds are more static versus in the old animation style, there was more dynamic backgrounds in terms of like background characters and extras, right? In this moment, I missed the inhabitants of Chaotic, right? There is a person by her, but like he doesn't move because he's drawn in to be part of the background. And it is like, I'd be questioning if it's real too. If nobody here's moving, like blink, blink if you need help. Like move an arm, something. Drink your drink, eat your food in the background. Who's to say? Talk to your friend. But because the characters are static, I had that moment of like, I don't know, is this real? Like, Shinwan's the only one moving. So I just thought that was kind of funny, kind of insightful of like, she's like, is this even real? And I'm like, I don't know either. But on to my final thoughts. My final thoughts of this episode are I like this episode. It's pretty straightforward, it's clean cut, and I would call it memorable, right? Especially since this is the first time we get to see Milline up close and personal, right? Milline is freaky and he's important. And the lava pond creates this high stakes that's like the first domino in the domino effect to fall in the titular Marillion invasion, right? We're really starting to get into the meat and potatoes of what the storyline is about. And we are like solidly in rising action, right? From the Deep was the inciting incident, and now we're like solidly in rising action. But besides that, it's like a pretty standard episode. It has some good action. It moves the overarching story forward. I like seeing the scan quest in the lava pond. I like seeing the match. And yeah, so overall, I like the episode, but I will have to double down on, I'm not in love with the comedic misogyny that is present in it. But, aside from that, it's a pretty solid episode. So let me know what you think, if you caught anything I didn't, and I'll see you next time. Bye.